Welcome to the College Football Bros. I'm Michael Newman.
I'm Ryan Newman.
And I'm Playoff Trey.
Oh, wow. Playoff Trey. I hope that's better than Playoff P.
Wow. Don't be hating on Playoff P. He's the man.
All right. On today's episode, we are going to debate whether the CFP committee got it right with the top 4 teams they chose. Because, of course, on Sunday, the playoff field was set. So we've got Alabama versus Notre Dame, 1 versus 4 in the Rose Bowl, which is going to be played in Dallas this year. And then the Sugar Bowl is number 2, Clemson against number 3, Ohio State. So going into Selection Sunday, it, of course, was clear that it was between Notre Dame and Texas A&M for that 4th spot. Do you think they made the right decision?
First of all, is it possible just to have a final 3? I mean, the way this shook out,
Yeah,
kind of like last year.
Yeah, I mean, but I think they got it right. I don't have an issue. Like I mentioned, at the end of the day, this 4th spot is just kind of more of like a title, since they just are given very little chance. The cards are stacked against them. But to me, the Irish clinched it when they went to Chapel Hill and whipped the Tar Heels. That was a very impressive and dominant win at North Carolina. Their defense was one of the only ones to be able to slow down that Tar Heel offense. I think that was a good visual for the committee. Of course, also beating Clemson earlier, so that was able to kind of offset that blowout. And they had a lot of convincing wins throughout the year. A&M, they did it. They had a great year. I think a lot of A&M fans would be happy with how it turned out. But they beat Florida, but in a lot of their other wins, they were pretty underwhelming, those victories. And then the Bama loss was a blowout. So I don't really have a problem with them. Cincinnati, they have a slight argument, but their schedule was just very weak. And in their biggest games of the year, they barely squeaked by. So overall, I don't really have an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think either pick would have been reasonable. I think if the committee had taken A&M, I don't think any of us would be sitting here saying that was a bad decision. Let me just throw up their resumes on the screen here. So here's some of the factors that on the left here that I think the committee kind of implicitly or explicitly takes into account. So obviously they're both 1-loss teams. Strength of schedule wise, A&M's was stronger as far as they had the tougher average opponent, but Notre Dame did have 2 extra games, so those count for something. And the big factor I like is strength of record, which basically asks, was it more difficult to go 10-1 against Notre Dame's schedule than it was to go 8-1 against A&M's schedule? And you can see here, Notre Dame was 2nd in the country in that statistic. So at least according to FPI, their record was slightly more impressive. And I think the final factor was just, who do you think is better? Because the resumes really are very close. I mean, they both have blowout losses to a really good team. They both have, A&M's got that great win against Florida. Notre Dame's got the win against Clemson. So a lot of similarities there. But ultimately, I think the committee just thought, we think Notre Dame's a little bit better. And the predictive metrics on average have Notre Dame just slightly ahead of A&M. So I think that's a reasonable decision by them.
Yeah, you're splitting hairs here. I agree with you that there was no wrong choice about who you're going to take here between these 2 teams. They both had great years. And it's kind of what you were saying about the predictive rank. You can kind of look at that. And then also just, I thought that they probably gave a lot of credit to Notre Dame just for beating Clemson. I mean, Clemson is Clemson, right? If you beat them, even without Trevor Lawrence, Uyunglele was unreal in that game as the backup there. So I think they have to give a lot of credit to that. I think that win was a little bit more impressive than the Florida win for Texas A&M. To me, that was kind of one of the main differences. And then Trey brought up the UNC game. I think that if you look at their second most impressive win of the year, I think UNC's is a little bit more impressive than I think it was Auburn was probably maybe A&M's second best win. So I think that's kind of like both times Notre Dame had a slight edge there as far as opponent. So I wouldn't have mind seeing A&M. Great year, awesome year for them. The bros have all been high on A&M for a long time with Jimbo. We're all saying, hey, they're gonna, the recruiting and stuff, it's gonna get there, it's gonna show. This year it did, especially on that defense. So But I do think Notre Dame was the right call.
Yeah. If you're an A&M fan watching this, make your case in the comments. We read all the comments. We'll respond to them. There is a case to be made for sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think as we've
They've
talked
played
about
well.
here.
Their defense is stout. Their D-line's one of the best in
Running
the
game's
country.
really good.
Yeah.
Getting better and better throughout the year.
Mm-hmm. So there's no doubt a case.
All right. So Trey kind of teased it a little bit, but let's talk about our thoughts on how they ranked Cincinnati. So I'm going to pull up Cincinnati's resume here and add that to the list. So they are undefeated, 9-0, but they had a much worse strength of schedule, as you can see here, 79th in the country. The predictive metrics have them a bit lower than A&M and Notre Dame as well. And you can see the strength of record a little bit worse. So, you go undefeated and you have to weigh the schedule. So that's what the committee did. And ultimately, I think having them 8th, I think Florida with 3 losses should have been behind them. But to me, they didn't have, I don't think they were a top 4 team.
No, that's, to me, it was clear that they weren't. They had a couple opportunities against Tulsa. And then, of course, they had a big game against at UCF earlier, and they just did not look that great. I mean, the defense is good, no doubt about it. It's a fantastic defense that they have, but they just did not separate from those schools. Both of those games were very, very close, and that's how they finished the year. Those were like their last 2 games that we saw. So in the committee's eyes, of course, a little bit of recency bias maybe there too, but even just the whole body of work, I just don't think it was enough to get top 4. But I mean, do they deserve to be behind Florida and I guess OU too? OU, I could see them being ahead of them. I probably would have put them 6th, right behind A&M. I'm not going up in arms about them being behind Florida and OU, but I personally would have put them 6th.
Yeah, I'm not up in arms either, because really at the end of the day, the difference between 5th or 11th doesn't really matter, because they're going to go to the New Year's Six Bowl. But I think that they I agree. I think they should have been higher than 8th if I'm worried about splitting the hairs of the actual ranking. The one thing that worked against them was, in terms of the strength of schedule, was the AAC is a good conference. Obviously, it's not a Power 5, but they had a somewhat of a down year. Some of their top teams just didn't live up. UCF, Memphis, Houston. You kind of go down the list. SMU. Yeah. There were some good ones, but they weren't as good as we usually see them, or we thought they would be this year. So they didn't get a chance to have a real marquee win, or multiple wins, and so that kind of worked against them.
And what I think is even more unfair than maybe where the committee ranked them, because is just the system that we have. Because Cincinnati had a great year. They went undefeated, and it wasn't a garbage schedule. Yeah, it was worse than some of the teams we're comparing them to, but they still beat some decent teams. They should have the chance to prove themselves against the top teams. So that's why I think, this is obviously a discussion for another episode we could do, but an 8-team playoff, which gives the G5 a chance, would kind of solve a problem there.
Yeah, I'm fine with a playoff. I don't mind. I wouldn't mind seeing that. I think if it goes to 16, I think I would start to get a little 8 is still, that respects the regular season a lot. Every game still pretty much matters. If it goes to 8, 16 is a little much, but yes, I would like to see that. I would like to see a team like Cincinnati and UCF a few years ago, going to Coastal Carolina also this year, teams that are undefeated, get a legit shot to continue it and prove it. So I wouldn't have a problem with that.
The last point on the Oklahoma thing was, it was kind of a weird look, because Oklahoma, I believe, was 11th going into this week, and they beat Iowa State, who's very good. They were number 6 at the time, but
they jumped
Cincinnati won, and Oklahoma jumped them. So that was a little surprising, but again, at the end of the day, not a big deal.
Yeah, and you had lost to K-State at home. I know it was early in the year, but still a loss, man.
Yeah, for sure. So. Alrighty. Well, overall, I guess we think that the top 4 itself was a good job by the committee, at least. So thanks for watching the College Football Bros. We have 4 more videos coming out in the next week. They're going to be breaking down Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and Notre Dame, and all of their chances in the playoff. We're going to break down their offense, defense, and make some predictions. So be sure to subscribe. Also, let us know in the comments here what you think about the committee's decision. I know some people feel very strongly, so would like to see those comments, and we will see you next time.
You've been watching the College Football Bros. Be sure to subscribe here on YouTube and in your podcast app for college football content all year round. For bonus episodes and access to our Discord chat, join our Patreon at patreon.com/collegefootballbros. Thanks for watching.